And this afternoon, there's some good news for the private sector as the African Center for Economic Transformation begins the implementation of Business Accelerated Project dubbed ACET Business Transform. The project aims at supporting private sector development and growth in the G20 Compact with Africa countries, starting with Ghana. The project focuses on growth sectors in manufacturing and processing, giving their relevance to economic transformation and inclusive growth. The Africa Center for Economic Transformation, with its vision of transforming Africa's economy within a generation, has worked with governments and other stakeholders to define and support the transformation agenda of the African continent. And a bit to increase the impact of its activities, ACET has designed a strategic partnership for private sector growth, which it is implementing. Now, to understand this better, I'm joined in the studio by Christophe Esikpe, his senior communications consultant at the Africa Center for Economic Transformation, and Charles Odum, who is head of private sector development at ACET. Good to have you, gentlemen, in the studio. First, let me start with Christophe. Let's understand what you actually do at ACET.
Well, my name is Ed Brown. So
Abraham.
Edward Brown.
Okay.
Is the name. Yeah. At ACET, ACET is a policy institute, with the primary objective of supporting African economies to achieve long-term growth and economic transformation. We do this by undertaking research, policy advice, and advocacy to support businesses and African governments in achieving their objectives in the development. We are a preeminent Pan-African institution based in Accra, but we are Pan-African and we have various connections and contacts in many African countries, both North, South, East, and West.
Okay, so let's look at this new project that you're bringing on, the Transform project. What is it about? Okay,
the ACET Business Transform is aimed at supporting small and medium-sized enterprises in Ghana. It's a pilot project in Ghana, and we intend to expand it to other countries. But its aim is to support small and medium-sized enterprises in Ghana to make them investment ready by providing targeted support to what you might call the brownfields, those companies that are still struggling to become competitive and to be able to access affordable financing in the capital market.
All right, so Dr. Edward Brown, you've been explaining to us what you do, but let me bring in Charles here. You say the private sector development program is a unique driver of private sector initiatives. How are you leveraging on research and advocacy to be able to achieve this?
Okay, so as I said, in ACET, we are policy, think and do tank. And everything we do is anchored in sound, in research and sound analytics. So what we're doing with this particular program is actually undertaking research to understand which growth areas that a country can focus on and develop and support SMEs to drive economic transformation.
Now, you say you envision economically transformed Africa. That is quite daring. What would it take for this to happen?
Well, I don't think it's daring because there are already countries that have gone through that. You can look at South Korea, you can look at Vietnam, you can look at even China. And in fact, in the 1960s, Ghana and South Korea were almost at par, in terms of their endowments and capabilities. But today, Korea is several miles ahead of Ghana. In terms of GDP per capita, it's about 10 times that of Ghana. So, transforming Africa in a generation is something that is feasible. But there are certain key parameters that governments and countries must adhere to.
Okay.
And for ACET, we define economic transformation as growth with depth. In other words, growing the economy is not sufficient. You need to diversify the economy, the production base and export base. You need to be able to develop competitive exports. Productivity has to increase significantly, both in businesses and offices and in the service sector.
Okay.
At the same time, you need to apply and upgrade your technology in order to stay abreast with the evolving dynamics in the market. All these four variables, we believe together, can improve human well-being and lift up people's income, and therefore they become more prosperous.
The ACET Transform sounds quite interesting and something that would really work if we push it. But there must be some research and analytics that underpin it. What are those, Charles?
Okay, so before we put together the ACET Business Transform, we undertook quite a number of studies, one of them significant being a product-based study on Ghana, and we do that also for other countries.
Okay.
Now, this product-based study tells us which areas we can actually focus on to diversify our economy. And working with SMEs, we're able to grow their capabilities to now access other markets and grow the economic base. Yeah.
Now, if you look at the transformation, the Africa Transformation Drive that you are currently working on, some say we do not have the time to achieve this. Do we have time?
Of course we do have time, but we are way behind time, actually.
Okay.
But of course we can start.
Okay.
And I think countries are beginning to focus on this area. But the story of economic transformation in Africa is very bleak, because over the last 2 decades, although countries are trying to industrialize, they haven't been able to achieve economic transformation in the way the Asian tigers did, by diversifying their economies, and therefore they can hedge against external shocks, like the COVID, for example. The COVID epidemic came, and our economy and institutions are weak, and therefore we were not able to withstand those shocks. And the effects, even though the health impact were minimal, the economic impact were quite devastating to the economies. GDP growth declined significantly, even to the negative. And I think the prediction with the IMF and the World Bank is that in 2022, there might be a rebound, which would then accelerate if countries continue to do the right things.
So, of course, the fact that we're behind time doesn't mean we haven't done anything.
No.
What has been done so far?
Well, there's, like in the private sector, most countries are trying to accelerate industrial policies and support small and medium-sized enterprises. But I think, as Charles did indicate, the key binding constraint, particularly for small and medium-sized enterprise, is that many of these enterprises lack the institutional capability. Their financial management systems are poor, and therefore they are not able to be investment ready to attract affordable capital as well as joint ventureship. And what we're doing with ACET Business Transform is to help these companies, selected ones that fit the profile of providing the possibilities of becoming export competitive and therefore generating more income for the economy and also tax revenues for the economy.
So definitely the ACET Transform is a driver to achieving this goal you are championing. But of course, let's look at the whole, because people think that we've seen a lot of these kind of concepts and initiatives, but it really didn't work. How different is this one?
Okay. So as I said, for us, whatever we do is anchored in research. So we take our time to understand the dynamics before we take steps. And then also the program is being designed in a way that actually is very bespoke. So we look at the SMEs that have been selected individually. We do diagnosis on them and understand their peculiar situation, their peculiar problems before we bring in technical partners that we work with to actually provide those bespoke support services to them. Like you said, all to make sure that we make them investment ready, and then also help them to integrate into global value chains, especially with local content, where they can take advantage of local content provisions and then access the markets of big enterprises that are already
let's talk about the SMEs that you're working with currently. How did you identify them?
Okay. So after our main research, like I said, we did a product-based study, and we identified some products for the economy. Then we did a value chain assessment as well. So in that study, we identify some companies that we believe have the potential, to grow, given the necessary support. And then we open up applications for the companies within these sectors to apply. Now, once they apply, we assessed them, and then we did a short list, and we did physical visits to also verify and validate what they are giving us, in terms of their responses, and then we did a final selection. So currently, as you said, we have 10 SMEs that have been selected for the first cohort to go through the pilot here in Ghana.
It does surely look appealing, and definitely I would be asking for the criteria for people to also benefit from this one. But I'm happy that Doc talked about the fact that we are not doing much, and if we continue to do the right things, we would make headway. What are the things that we can do to achieve this vision?
I think from the public policy point of view, if I were a leader in terms of economic transformation, I'll be looking for 5 key indicators and asking my lieutenants to target this as impact. One, the economy, as I said earlier, must diversify. In other words, you can't pack your eggs in one basket.
Definitely.
We're a primary product producer. We produce cocoa, we produce diamonds, we produce oil. But we're not adding value, to these products. And therefore, much of the value capture, the higher percentage of value capture is at the downstream when you export the products. And you are not processing those materials here. So you need to diversify your economy. That's one. And that helps you to hedge against external shocks. The second thing is that you need to be export competitive. Export competitive doesn't necessarily mean that you have to export everything you produce. But export competitiveness allows you to hedge your performance against the best in the world. In other words, if you say you should buy made in Ghana product, those products must be affordable and of good quality to compare with others, and therefore you'll be able to compete with the imports coming into the country. So it's very, very important. Now, the third is that you need to continuously improve productivity. And to do that, you need to train your workforce, get them skilled in those areas that the economy needs most. And fourthly, you need to constantly upgrade your technology. You need to apply new technologies, and therefore you can become more competitive. If you do these 4 things, given the experience of Asia, Latin America, you will then begin to see improvements in human well-being, improving incomes, and then you also see a lot of women participating in the formal sector. These are the kinds of things you need to do in order to increase productivity, in order to improve your well-being, and therefore transform your economy. But at the moment, African economies are not transforming. In fact, some of them are actually regressing. That is the results we are finding for the
Now, the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, we're told, is also in to ensure some leverage. What difference does it make?
Oh, it makes tremendous difference, because in a recent flagship report that we published, we made the case that African countries must integrate to transform. And the AFCFTA offers a tremendous opportunity, both a political impetus, but also provides the framework through which countries can begin to collaborate. In fact, many of the countries in Africa, there are 15 landlocked countries, and they are unlikely to transform without integrating into the regional markets. And therefore, the AFCFTA offers tremendous opportunity for countries to participate in the trade and regional integration agenda. There are many key variables that affect every country's development. There are local problems, but the solutions may lie at the regional level. Like the regional public goods. For example, digital connectivity. We should be able to harmonize our digital systems across the continent and reduce the cost of telephony. For example, in Europe today, regardless of wherever you are, you can call at the same rate. But in Africa, it's not the same. You cannot transfer, you cannot actually transfer your resources from one country to the other easily. It is even difficult for high-skilled labor to move from one country to the other. All these things need regional collaboration. And if countries begin to think local but act regional, then they would begin to transform the economy. So the AFCFTA is a very important vehicle that would help drive this agenda. And at ACET, We're already working with Rwanda, for example, in trying to help them align their regulatory frameworks to ensure that they can benefit more effectively from the protocols that have been set up by the AFCFTA.
Okay, but Charles, you mentioned the bit about the 10 SMEs you're working with. I'm curious to know what will be their takeaway or take home by the end of this program.
Yes, so at the end of the program, we intend to make them investment ready. What it means is that we would have had their governance structures properly put in place. We would have streamlined their operations in terms of technical operations. We would have also looked at their financials to make sure that the books are properly prepared and that they have financial systems, which make investors comfortable to deal with them. Also, we try to help them access new markets because one of the objectives of the program is integrating into global value chains. So linking them to potential markets or off-takers to help them grow their business is one of the takeaways that we hope that these SMEs will take from this program. Yeah.
Is that why you call yourself a think and do tank? Which is, normally is a departure from the normal thing we know, think tank. Why is that, Dr.
Brown? Think tanks these days are also evolving fast to continue to be relevant. And as a think and do tank, yes, the private sector program is one, but we also engage in ways that bring countries together to learn and therefore create traction for policy reforms and implementation. And that is also one of our drivers of the assets work. In other words, when we say we are think and do, we just do not undertake research, publish it, or organize events and fanfares, and that's it. We actually work with the countries, a collection of countries, together to understand what are the issues and help them define what are some of the new recommendations that are emerging and how they can then integrate that into their policies and programs. So there's an uptick.
All right. So tell me about the official launch of the ACET program.
Okay. So the official launch is on Monday, the 8th of November at Labadi Beach Hotel at 5 p.m. But from 4 p.m. we will have the opportunity to see what our SMEs are doing, display their products, and also listen to their hopes and vision and expectations from the program. And then we would have a networking cocktail where we expose our SMEs to various communities, so the development community, the investor community, private sector leaders, and various people that really together enhance the way we do business in Ghana here. We are expecting to have representatives from the various institutions, including some of our sponsors like the World Bank. The investor community is also heavily behind us, supporting us, and our technical partners, whom we work with, would also be there to join us at the launch.
Are we all invited for this program?
Absolutely.
I'm grateful that you were able to make it. Charles Odum and Dr. Edward Brown are all from ACET. I wish you all the best for your program tomorrow.